Sure thing. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining. My name is Spencer. So today we're going to be talking about SFI, chain of custody, fiber sourcing, and certified sourcing, how they apply, how they can be used, the different requirements for each one. As well, there will be a Q&A session at the end. So if you would like to present any questions to the group and to our panelists or myself, please go ahead and put them in the discussion. We'll go through them at the end and we can review and address those questions. Any questions, if we run out of time, we can go ahead and follow up with you as well via email. And there will also be a recording of this in the end. So my name is Spencer. I'm with SES Global Services. We're a certification body located in Emeryville, California. I am a sales executive for chain of custody, focusing on FSC, SFI, PFC, as well as I do fisheries. With me, we have Zach. Zach has been with SFI for 9 years. He's the senior manager of market access. He helps certificate holders develop marketing material to promote their certification. He also works with various committees to promote forest literacy as well as to help with education. Uh, Annie has been with SFI for 7 years. She's the senior director of green building and supply chain. Annie is an accredited lead green associate, chair member of U.S. Green Building Council of Minnesota, Middle St. Croix watershed board member, and council member for the city of Afton, Minnesota. She uses this wide net and extensive knowledge to accelerate sustainable development via certified wood products. So with that, I just want to turn it over to Annie to give a quick introduction to SFI.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Spencer. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just for a few quick slides. Some of you probably are familiar and have seen this before, but I just thought I'd give a level set for a couple minutes to make sure we're all on the same page. Thanks again for this opportunity and for joining us today. So just a little background of SFI. We've been around for 30 years now, and we've really evolved substantially from the early days when we started. We at SFI have a vision of a world that values and benefits from sustainably managed forests, and our mission is to advance sustainability through forest-focused collaboration. And if we had more time and another topic, we would share a lot about those collaborative partnerships that we have, but we can save that for chapter 2. We are an independent nonprofit organization governed by a independent board of directors representing equally 3 different chambers: economic, environmental, and social. And you can see our current board member organizations listed here on the slide, and they are all at an executive level representation. We have 4 key pillars of work. Most people know us for the standards work that we do, and that is at the heart of everything we do, and that is how we started 30 years ago. And we've evolved substantially. We're currently working off the very robust 2022 standards. And in the last few years, decades, we've really evolved to also add the pillars of conservation, impact work, environmental education, and community engagement. We have 5 key main standards, certification standards: the forest management standards applicable on the lands in US and Canada. So unique to SFI, we just have 1 forest management standard. We also have the fiber sourcing standard and the chain of custody standard. We'll get more into details on those today. We also have an Indigenous Peoples and Families module, as well as our new cool urban and community forest sustainability standard. All of our standards are subject to independent annual audits by a certification body, one of those listed here annually. And I have one more slide, I believe, just showing the scale that we have to really make a difference in North America and beyond. We started back in 2000. You can see the y-axis here speaks to the number of acres certified to SFI, and we're the green line. Through the last 3 decades, we've really expanded on the amount of land-based, forest land-based certified in the US and Canada. And the reason being is that organizations understand the value that provides stakeholders and end users for those assurances to know that products have come from responsibly managed forests. So we, with that scale, have a really good opportunity to scale those positive impacts and make a difference. So I just wanted to share that real quick before we jump in. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now and pass it back to you, Spencer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. And that last slide is huge. It's really amazing to see the growth that SFI has maintained in the US and North America. We can see a lot of the other ones have either kind of flatlined or started in decline. So congratulations, and look forward to diving into that more as to what some of those reasons may be. I also appreciate that in one of your slides you highlighted chain of custody and fiber sourcing. Those are going to be the two main topics that we're discussing today. So let's just open it up with that. I want to talk about chain of custody, fiber sourcing. If we could get an overview of each of these standards and what their primary purpose is.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, SFI chain of custody is an accounting system that tracks certified forest fiber content through the supply chain to an end product. Companies will use SFI chain of custody certification to track and communicate to their customers that the wood fiber has come from responsibly managed forests. In comparison, the fiber sourcing standard, it's unique to SFI in that it governs how companies can procure wood fiber from non-certified lands. The SFI fiber sourcing standard is critical in the North American context, given that the majority of the forest fiber comes from small private landowners. This is one thing that SFI understood early on, was that not all lands could achieve forest management certification, simply due to the fact that there are so many landowners that manage smaller parcels of land. So the fiber sourcing standard addresses this challenge by placing specific performance requirements on the mills to ensure that the fiber that they source still comes from good forestry operations. What this means is that mills have to use loggers that are trained in sustainable forestry practices. They also have to conduct a landscape level biodiversity assessment. They need to monitor and improve water quality on harvested sites over time. And so indirectly, the fiber sourcing standard has an incredible impact on the entire landscape, not just a single forest management unit. Given that about 90% of the world's forests are uncertified, the fiber sourcing standard acts as a strong mechanism that promotes responsible procurement from these non-certified lands.
Okay, interesting. So then within SFI, there's also certified sourcing. How does that compare with fiber sourcing?
Yeah, great question. So the key difference here is that fiber sourcing is applicable to what we call primary producers. Think of companies like sawmills that source most of their wood directly from the forest. Whereas certified sourcing applies to what we call secondary producers, which are more like product manufacturers who buy their fiber from mills. So the certified sourcing standard explains how you can label and sell products containing fiber that was sourced through the fiber sourcing standard. When product manufacturers follow the requirements within the certified sourcing standard, their products can be labeled as certified sourcing, which means those manufacturers have verified that at least 2/3 of their wood fiber came from either certified forests, recycled content, or fiber sourcing, and that the other 1/3 is from non-controversial sources. Important to note, though, that both fiber sourcing and certified sourcing are subject to annual audits. So, in summary, typically a mill will obtain a fiber sourcing standard, and a product manufacturer buying from that mill would obtain certified sourcing.
Great, thank you. So it seems that there's typically a bit more knowledge around chain of custody, and a bit more familiarity, recognition, and then fiber sourcing and certified sourcing may come secondary sometimes. So what would be the benefits of adding certified sourcing or fiber sourcing?
Sure, I'll jump in here. So, as Zach was mentioning, so the primary reason to add fiber sourcing is that it really helps to increase the pool of wood fiber that's available and can be considered from a responsible source. The impetus for the fiber sourcing standard, which Zach alluded to, is the fact that the U.S. In particular, over half of the forest landowners are small, private, and family landowners, and they may only harvest like once a generation and don't necessarily have the resources to invest in that certification. However, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not managing their lands properly. So the fiber sourcing standard places the onus on the mill to ensure that all of the wood that they bring, all the logs they bring into their mill meet very strict certain requirements. And so in addition to those procurement requirements that are listed within the forest fiber sourcing standard, there's additional educational components specific to harvesting professionals, logger training, and this is really a key example of how the fiber sourcing standard expands beneficial outcomes beyond just certified footprint of certified forests. And so in this way, the fiber sourcing standard really helps to improve forest management practices beyond just the footprint of a certified forest. So while fiber sourcing is for the mills, which are the primary producers, like Zach was saying, certified sourcing then is a little bit further down the supply chain for secondary producers, for those manufacturing companies who purchase their fiber, their wood from those mills with that fiber sourcing certification from the mill. Those secondary producers making products would then carry this certified sourcing certificate. And the primary reason for companies to add certified sourcing is for them to be able to communicate these assurances to their customers. So certified sourcing requires product manufacturers to verify that 2/3 of their wood comes from certified forests or fiber sourcing certified or is recycled. And so the remaining third must be from non-controversial sources. So in this way, the certified sourcing label provides those assurances to the end users so that those customers can be rest assured that the product has come from and has been sourced responsibly. Does that make sense?
It does. I think you guys did very
Okay.
well. There's a
Okay.
lot packed in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Um, so I just want to pivot a little bit. I think a lot of our listeners are going to be the ones boots on the ground conducting the audits. So in regard to audits, and just to tie it back to fiber sourcing and chain of custody, how do the requirements differ between fiber sourcing and chain of custody?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll just preface by saying all of the SFI standards are subject and required to have annual audits. A fiber sourcing audit is going to involve checking conformance to all 13 principles, 11 objectives, 29 performance measures, and 59 indicators that are listed within that fiber sourcing standard. They are all there for the primary reason to promote responsible forestry. So an audit for fiber sourcing is going to include things like visiting a harvest site, reviewing the harvest management plan, speaking with forest landowners and the harvesting professionals, just to kind of name a few things. Organizations certified to the fiber sourcing standard must collect information on the source of that fiber through a due diligence system to avoid controversial sources. This is going to include things like verifying tree species, where those logs came from. I just last week was fortunate enough to witness an audit on a certified organization, and I got to see the guy who was checking the semi trucks bringing the logs in, and there is a lot of protocol going on there. They are checking the species of the logs, they're checking the region, they have all sorts of scanner codes to verify where these logs are coming from. So there's a very robust due diligence that is on that mill to ensure where those logs are coming from. Certified organizations are also required to conduct a risk assessment and have processes to assess substantiated concerns if there are any. And then finally, certified organizations must make those audit results public. Post them or make them available to the public to help increase awareness around responsible forest practices. Now, chain of custody audit looks more at an organization's accounting system that really tracks that forest fiber content. So looking at its sourcing processes, its paperwork, to ensure that they are meeting those requirements within the chain of custody standard. And so this is going to verify how an organization is receiving the material into their facility from their suppliers, and it's ensuring that they are tracking those claims that are associated with that fiber. And then the organization is passing those claims on via the products they sell. So the chain of custody really details all of that. It details the inputs, that manufacturer's bringing into their system and the outputs that it's selling. And then, so really kind of you can think of it as a checking account. So they're accounting for the certified material coming in, and then they're accounting for it going out. And so companies that are certified to the SFI chain of custody standard can choose to adhere to and therefore be audited to one of three different methods, either a physical separation, which is going to be that certified material is going to be kept separate over in the corner, not touched, not commingled, and then that'll going to be physically separated. That's one option. It's kind of difficult to do that. There are other options too, and those are more of a mixed inputs, and that's either going to be a percentage method or a credit method. And each of those have their own requirements that are clearly identified within the standard, within the language of the standard, and then therefore audited appropriately for whichever method that organization chooses. I won't get into the huge details on that, but it's all available, and we're here to help if you have questions as well. But there are different options that chain of custody certified organizations can choose when it comes to the methodology on how they're going to account for those the certified material coming in and out.
Yeah, and of course there are a lot of different there are a lot of details in regard to those different separation methods and credit
Yeah.
percentage. That'd almost be worth talking about entirely on
Yeah.
its own. But I'm sure there's a lot of resources available that SFI provides to explain that as well. We have some resources available to help out with those systems as well. So if there's follow-up questions there, feel free to ask. We'd love to help you out there. One thing that we do know about auditing is there is a lot of documentation involved in the audit process, along with the boots on the ground portion. So could you just talk about the difference in documentation required for each type of audit?
Sure. Yeah. In the case of the fiber sourcing, there needs to be evidence in support of all 13 principles, 11 objectives, 29 performance measures, and 59 indicators must be present. So when they're auditing, they need to be able to go through and make sure that there's evidence in support of all of those requirements. An audit to the fiber sourcing standard involves field visits to the harvest site to ensure compliance to the required requirements specific to things like water, biodiversity, forest health, just to name a few. So they're out there making sure that those requirements are adhered to. Chain of custody, on the other hand, is really looking at the organization's accounting system. And so it's more going to be tracking that forest fiber content through the production and manufacturing to the end product. So an audit for this is often verified through things like a bill of ladings and that kind of various confirmation of supporting paperwork and that kind of thing to ensure that they're meeting the requirements that are listed in the chain of custody standard. So there's a review of written policies and procedures that takes place more so there for the chain of custody.
Okay, great. Thank you, Annie.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to pivot a little bit, and I know you have experience with lead, and the lead has been undergoing some changes in terms of what counts for lead points, and SFI is involved in this as well. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how these standards tie into lead.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So currently, they have just launched Lead V5 in April. The older versions, Lead V4 and 4.1, are still in play and probably will be for quite some time. Forest certifications receive equal weight in all of LEED standards for version 4 and 4.1, as well as version 5, the new version. It's worth noting, however, that the new version really kind of transformed that materials and resources credit altogether, and that's where wood is applicable for buildings mostly, and for construction. And so they have developed a new additional guidance document for the new materials and resources. They call MR specific. That credit is the building product selection and procurement credit. And so it's kind of a complicated credit, but in short, it has 3 different levels, and each level of performance is going to achieve a point or a a point or more. Right now, they've only assessed level 1. And so all 4 certifications are equal and accepted in level 1. They're working to develop the criteria for levels 2 and 3. So they're still outstanding, and they're still being worked on. So this is one reason why certifications and kind of the extra supporting information is kept within an additional guidance document, so it has the flexibility to change and be revised and as needed, rather than waiting for a whole new standard. So in short, currently certifications are included and are equal in LEED v5, just as they are in the previous version. But there's additional guidance still yet to come, and we're very hopeful that they remain, as they are, as far as give credit where it's appropriate.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to note that it's all standards. It's not just chain of custody. Fiber sourcing works as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's worth noting too, Spencer, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but they also obviously have certifications applicable for certifications in existing buildings. So for like green cleaning products, janitorial paper, that kind of thing, certifications are equal in that as well. So.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So some changes are going on with LEED as well. EUDR is the hot topic in the industry right now, especially for anybody doing any business in the European Union. So SFI offers a fiber sourcing add-on that offers compliance for EUDR. Could you tell us a little bit more about this? How maybe some of the listeners can integrate fiber sourcing to use or to comply with EUDR?
Sure. Yeah. I'll just jump in and say definitely. So SFI has developed an optional fiber sourcing module that certified organizations can choose to add on to their existing certification to support EUDR due diligence requirements. This would be especially probably attractive for those who are working more internationally because this module was developed to support EUDR's due diligence requirements. The modules integrate EUDR definitions as well as EUDR's due diligence system requirements. So if any of the listeners or attendees are interested in that, we have information on our website about this module, and certainly are here to help any way we can on that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, a little bit more on that to come, I believe.
Mhm.
So let's talk just some challenges here. So what are some challenges that companies are facing when they're implementing chain of custody, fiber sourcing, or certified sourcing?
Yeah, I can take this one. Well, I think for companies who are new to certification, just learning how certifications work and getting used to the specific language that's used, which tends to be technical and not very intuitive, can be a challenging thing to get used to. You know, Annie mentioned we've got objectives, we've got performance measures and indicators. And so if this isn't something you're familiar with, it is a lot to digest. Also, getting certified involves writing down a lot of processes and procedures that may have not been previously documented. Sometimes these aren't the most clear, and getting everyone on board and making them more official can be challenging. But once this is done, having those processes in place not only helps with certification, but it also advances good standard operating procedures that a company can set up for long-term success. Another challenge that we see is organizations not having a realistic timeline for implementing these processes and documentation needed for certification, as well as scheduling an audit with a certification body. This can take several months to get the systems in place and get an audit scheduled. So it's not the type of thing that's going to happen overnight. These standards often require an organization to have a thorough understanding of their supply network. And so it's important to know who can sell you SFI certified inputs and what the claims on those inputs are, as that will determine which standard you should certify to. It's also important to ensure that the implementation of the SFI chain of custody, SFI certified sourcing, or SFI fiber sourcing system is properly resourced, and it has a dedicated staff member who's responsible for overseeing it. Lastly, not a challenge, but actually a benefit of SFI's chain of custody and certified sourcing standards is that the only cost is to the certificate holder. And the only cost to the certificate holder is the auditing cost. There's no actual fee paid to SFI for either of those certifications, which is unique to SFI.
Yeah, so that actually brings up 2 points. That is big savings for the certificate holder, which might be partly it might play into why we've seen the growth in North America for SFI. The other thing that I wanted to mention, one thing that we've seen that helps speed up the auditing process, you mentioned that it can take months, and sometimes it does. That is true. But one thing we have seen that SFI has done to help speed that up is by often permitting remote audits post-COVID. And that has brought up the audit timeline a little bit in comparison to some of the other standards out there. Um, so you mentioned there's three standards on the table here. I was just wondering if you could dive into maybe which ones might be most relevant for the forest owners, mills, paper manufacturers, retailers, kind of dive down the supply chain, what might be best fit for what.
Yeah, absolutely. So for forest owners or those directly managing forest lands, they would be looking at our SFI Forest Management Standard. That's not something we cover today, but the standard does cover 17 objectives, which covers everything from conserving biological diversity, protecting water resources, recognizing and respecting Indigenous peoples' rights, as well as climate smart forestry and fire resiliency. I think you mentioned mills is the next. So mills would obtain our fiber sourcing standard. And as Annie mentioned, that allows them to responsibly source wood from non-certified lands and have a positive impact at the landscape scale. This certification is typically for mills who source logs from smaller private landowners who may only harvest once in a generation and don't have the resources to certify their lands to the forest management standard. So again, just really reiterating that the forest fiber sourcing standard places the onus on the mill to ensure that the standard requirements are met. And so with that, it helps expand responsible forestry practices beyond the boundaries of certified lands. And it also provides greater amounts of sustainably sourced wood fiber for those mills. And then for entities like paper manufacturers and retailers, they would be looking at either chain of custody or certified sourcing, and that would really depend on what the available inputs would be in their supply chain.
And can I
Great.
just jump in, Spencer,
Yeah,
real
please do.
quick? Because I think so. Zach and I are really cognizant of differentiating between fiber sourcing and certified sourcing. And so we've really drilling in that point that fiber sourcing is for the mill, which it is. However, I think we've neglected to say that mills we'd like them to get chain of custody certified as well, because they need that to pass on the chain of custody. So just one thing that I think might have been missed because we've been drilling in fiber sourcing, which is for the mill level. But if they want to pass on a chain of custody claim, they would want to acquire that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you can have them exclusively, but in order to pass on the chain of custody claim, the mill will need to have both.
That's correct.
Great. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I just want to put out a quick reminder right now. If you have any questions, please go ahead, put them in the chat. We'll review those. We're just coming to the end of the questions that we have planned for the listeners, and so we look forward to diving into to what questions you may have. So one question that I do want to ask you guys is, we talked a little bit about EUDR. SFI is recognized in North America. Now it can be used in international markets. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that and what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So SFI is endorsed under PEFC, or the Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification. And so they're an international umbrella organization that endorses standards in countries around the world. And you're right, SFI has huge recognition in North America, less so in places like Europe, where PEFC is more well known. So one of the benefits of holding an SFI chain of custody certificate is if you're selling into areas where PEFC is more well recognized, you can use your SFI chain of custody to make PEFC claims. And that's, you just would use the the same procedures that you use through your chain of custody certificate, and you can sell that as a PEFC claim, which is an added benefit to having the SFI chain of custody.
Yeah, that opens up a lot of opportunity. That's a very important component here to SFI and the relationship with PEFC. Um, Zach, while I have you, I did want to ask you one question, a little bit more specific about your role at SFI. So a lot of what you do is help with forestry literacy, with helping clients with marketing material for their certifications, and that's something that we've talked about is how to help clients publicize and promote the certification. I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about maybe how clients can use or certificate holders can use your services.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the huge thing with having an SFI certification is the ability to make on-product claims on the products that organizations are selling. And so that's a direct way to convey to consumers that the product that they have bought comes from responsibly managed forests. Beyond that, SFI we're here to help our certified organizations promote the good work that they're doing. And so we do have a number of resources on our website that speak to some of the high level stats and facts, some of the things that Annie touched on at the beginning. But if there is any appetite for support, or if there's anything that we can do to help with, that's one of the things that also I think sets SFI apart from other forest certification standards, is how involved we are and supportive with regards to if there's a presentation to deliver, or if you need some help conveying a message. Annie, myself, our team members, we're always happy to step in and offer that guidance.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's true. We're here to help, and whether it's certified organizations or their customers or anything, that's one thing we like to make sure people know, that we're here if there's any questions or support that's needed for clarity. We're here to help.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we can send contacts out perhaps in our follow-up email. That way you can get a hold of anybody here on the panel. One question that has rolled in, if a sourcer plans to only source from SFI managed forests, would they still need a SFI sourcing certificate?
In this case, if they're only sourcing from SFI certified forests, do you get the sense if this is a mill or if this is someone further on down the supply chain?
It
I
does
guess,
not delineate, but we might be able to get
okay,
a follow-up.
sure. Well, I guess in either instance, let's say if it's a mill sourcing primarily from SFI certified forests, they could technically only have chain of custody because they would be sourcing only from certified lands. However, what we do see is mills having both chain of custody and fiber sourcing to give them that added, that increased area of fiber supply that they can pass on.
Great. I think that makes sense. So then another question, actually
Yeah,
fairly
and
adjacent. So this one is a
I'm
little bit more specific. I'm sorry, go ahead, Annie.
Spencer, can I just clarify? I'm not sure if it was clear enough, but yeah, so a primary mill would always need to have fiber sourcing.
Okay.
And then a secondary, if they wanted to, if they were sourcing only from if it was only FM, so SFI certified land going to a mill, it's all SFI. If the secondary producer wanted to, they could just choose to do chain of custody. But yeah, your primary source is always going to need the fiber sourcing. Just to clarify,
Great.
sorry, I can't remember. Maybe you said that, Zach. I apologize.
No, happy for you to jump in.
Yeah, good punctual response there. So this one's actually fairly adjacent. It's a mill that wants to participate in COC would really need both certified sourcing and COC cert. Or can they use their certified sourcing cert to participate in COC?
So having chain of custody allows you the flexibility to make chain of custody or certified sourcing claims. But if you only have certified sourcing, that limits you to only making certified sourcing claims.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, we do have a question. Uh, there is always much comparison between FSC and SFI and people understanding kind of the differences. So one question that came in is if if a certificate holder already has FSC chain of custody, what is the process to get SFI? How does it vary? Is it difficult to add SFI to that certificate? So I'd love to hear your input, and then I can also add a little bit on this one.
Sure. Yeah. I guess the first thing to look at would be is if your current certification body with FSC is also accredited to certify to SFI chain of custody. And if that's the case, it's a pretty simple addition, and it would just be an add-on to your existing audit to include an SFI chain of custody certification. If your certification body is not accredited to certify to SFI, you would have to find one on our website, and I can pop the link in the chat shortly of the list of the accredited certification bodies. But again, it would be a very similar process to what's done for FSC.
Yeah, that's great. And one thing they asked was a little bit more specific, perhaps in terms of compliance. Do you by chance know if they would need to have two separate due diligence systems? Can they combine them? Can language be interchangeable? Any input in that regard?
Often we see that there is a lot of overlap between the two. So it is just those minor details between the two standards. So a lot can be repurposed and used for both standards. And I will just pop the link in the chat for certification bodies. But the good news with SCS is they're accredited to do both SFI and FSC. So
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that link and for that answer. And just to add on a little bit, Zach did mention that oftentimes it is an expansion to your upcoming audit. So if you are already FSC certified, your surveillance audit is likely being scheduled, is coming up. At SCS, we just bundle those audits together. We'll conduct them at the same time. One nice thing about doing that too is technically you're having two audits, but at the same time with one auditor. If you did it at a different time than the surveillance audit, there's two audits being conducted. So if you bundle those, oftentimes it's a less expensive option than doing them separately, or if you were to do them with separate certification bodies. So there is some pricing advantages to doing it at the same time with the same certification body. If it's something you're considering doing, I'd encourage you to reach out. We can talk a little bit more about specifics for kind of the overlap, some differences, what might need to be done differently to meet compliance with SFI to prepare for that audit. One thing that we do as well is we offer guidance documentation for all of these certifications that we offer, so those can certainly help you as well. Another question that rolled through is, do you have to have both chain of custody and responsible sourcing to pass on certification to customers? Would just chain of custody be sufficient? And this is a two-part question, so maybe we just start right there.
yeah, so if they were what we call a primary producer, like a sawmill, they would need both fiber sourcing and chain of custody. But if it was a what we call a secondary producer, folks further down the supply chain, like a paper manufacturer, they would be able to get by with only the chain of custody.
Okay, thank you. And anything to add on that?
No, other than the fact that chain of custody allows for, I would say, in the marketplace. I mean, it's good to have either one, but I think having chain of custody is really helpful for its flexibility. Either works,
Sure.
but sometimes depending on what your goals are.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So the other part of that question then was about actually American Tree Farm. Non-industrial ownership is a source of material. Does that satisfy chain of custody requirements or responsible sources only? So how does American Tree Farm tie in as a source material in relation to SFI?
So American Tree Farm, it would count as a certified source under our standards. American Tree Farm is also endorsed under PEFC, so they fall under that PEFC umbrella of forest certification.
Okay.
So fiber coming into the supply chain, it with the American Tree Farm certification on it from lands that are American Tree Farm can be considered within this within SFI's certified supply.
And
That's
maybe
great. So
one
that
thing to
expanded
add.
the supply chain for SFI.
What's that?
eh,
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Spencer. But I guess one other thing to mention is that SFI recognizes all PEFC endorsed standards, and so that would be something that could be counted under a chain of custody.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for adding that, Zach. Another question that has come in. If material was purchased through a certified sourcing certificate and the certificate holder has certified sourcing and chain of custody, are they able to transfer the sale of that material forward to our client using our chain of custody cert instead of certified sourcing, as long as we still claim the material as SFI certified sourcing?
No. So in this case, if it's certified, if it came in as certified sourcing, it would be sold as certified sourcing. So there's no way you can sort of upgrade, so to speak, certified sourcing into a chain of custody claim. Certified sourcing will always stay as certified sourcing through the supply chain.
What if we flipped that question a little bit from certified sourcing to fiber sourcing?
Do you mind repeating the question with that as fiber sourcing?
Yeah, yeah, I'm just curious, would they be able to change the claim being made from fiber, if it was a fiber sourcing material to chain of custody?
It would still be sold as certified sourcing, but you would be able to use your chain of custody certificate to account for it as certified sourcing.
Sure.
I wonder if it would be helpful to show the label options. We have, did I include that? We have different like labels that so it can account for. So it can have the product can be certified chain of custody or certified chain of custody with percentages of like certified material. So there's differences in the label use that goes out the door. So if it comes in all as chain of custody, then it can go into the chain of custody claim. But if it's going to have that breakdown, then there's options for that too. Is that right? Did I get that, Zach? Our label
Yep.
guy?
Yep.
Okay.
Nailed it.
Great.
Yeah, perfect. Just last question that rolled in is, does SFI have any kind of annual administration fee charged by SFI?
So for our forest management and fiber sourcing standard, there is an annual fee. It's based on net sales of your organization. However, for chain of custody and certified sourcing, there is no fee paid to SFI. And so again, just one of those benefits and cost saving benefits to SFI is that chain of custody and certified sourcing, the only fee you're paying is that to your auditor.
Great, thank you for that clarification. I know earlier in the webinar we said that there were no fees, so I think that's a great clarifying point that it's dependent to chain of custody and forest management. So I appreciate the question there. So at this time, it looks like we've gone ahead and answered all of the questions that are in the chat. If any other questions roll through, we can go ahead and follow up with those via email or in the text thread. But for now, I just kind of wanted to wrap up and say that we'll be sending up, this will be recorded, so anybody that was in attendance will have a copy of this video to reference back to. We'll also be following up with some resources from SFI as well as from SCS. Some one sheets, there's links in the chat that Holly and Zach have been providing. Those will be available to you as well. If you have any questions, our contact info will be available also, so please feel free to reach out to Annie, Zach, myself, depending on what your needs are. We'll be happy to take care of you, help you as best we can. We both have great teams behind us, and so we'll get you the resources that you need. So with that, I just want to thank Annie and Zach for hopping on, joining in for for this webinar as panelists, for all their expertise, their help, and their long tenure at SFI. It's been really great. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and we'll go ahead and conclude. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.